We use our power to fell a god, and then seize our destiny!
Huh? Oh, you start playing. Hi mom, I'm on air, let me begin. It's that time of the year, I'm uploading again. This video has been long time coming, ever since my power scaling all Smash Ultimate characters video, where I accidentally blurted out that I was making it, not realizing how long it would take. But it's okay, only like 1 or 2 people were waiting for this anyway. So, now that I've come this far, might as well explain what I'm gonna do here. Over the course of the year, I'll be releasing 3 separate power scaling videos, each focusing on one of the Xenoblade Chronicles games, in order to go through the feats and scaling of the entire verse, to cover how powerful the franchise is. While I wanted to make this series of videos double as thematic analysis, it ended up way too long. So eventually I decided that the power scaling aspect would be the sole focus here. So if you want the story and themes to be analyzed, this is unfortunately not the video for that. This first video will be mainly about Shulk and rest of Xenoblade 1 cast, topic by topic, though I will refer to other games in the series whenever cross-scaling is appropriate. Timecodes available in description. Please keep in mind, this is not me scaling 1 or 2 characters, but entireties of long-ass games that can be argued to be convoluted as any one of the Kingdom Hearts titles, thus the video length. Considering the research time for this video was longer than the actual hundreds of hours I spent on each game, so that's like, what, well over 300 hours of my life spent on a good cause? Man, how did I ever think I was gonna release this video any earlier?
Mr. Bardic, sir, where's Xenoblade Chronicles X in all of this? That's like peak Wii U gaming.
Oh, it's in here somewhere. You'll see. Anyway, let's finally seize our destinies and delve deeper into the power of Xeno series, that in my opinion is immense even for its genre of JRPGs. Before we can truly begin, however, I would like to recommend you to refresh your mind on the story of Xenoblade 1 and its central concepts, because while there will be some spoilers in this video, I am not going to give you the summary here. YouTube is already full of good videos going over the plot and the themes of the game, and some of those are just 20 minutes, so check them out if you're new here, or better yet, go and play the game! Xenoblade Chronicles, or how it is known in Japan, Xenoblade Chronicles, is the first game in Monolith Soft's franchise of the same name, mainly dictated by the insane ideas of Takahashi Tetsuya. The game is widely regarded as one of the best JRPGs, and thus far the only one of its franchise to receive Definitive Edition remake, where the developer saw fit to go to Zero's 7th expansion school of animating it up. And that's where I'll be dropping my footage from. I kinda miss the old models, they were charming on their own way, but I'd be lying if I said that the new art style that's more in line with the rest of the series didn't look great. The central concept of the first game we'll be looking at first is its setting. Immediately upon the game starting, we are told the history of the world in Xenoblade Chronicles. In other words, lore.
Was that the bite of 87?
The first thing we hear in the game is that the world is verbatim stated to be ocean that is endless in size, which is repeated for clarity's sake. From this infinite ocean, 2 big bionicle looking gods came into existence, Bionis and Mechonis. First thing we need to look at in regards to the scaling is their size. The entire story of the game takes place on top of the bodies of these 2, and many have tried to calculate the size of Bionis in particular off of various things, all with pretty inconsistent answers. One calc puts the giant at 2,975 kilometers tall, based on how traveling through its red line takes some 30 minutes at average human speed of 10 miles a second, but in all honesty, considering how speedrunning from place to place in this game while activating 0 optional fights while reaching the top activates some 5 to 7 day and night cycles. some that are definitely canon, and then taking into account that the journey took our characters that long despite the fact that they probably don't travel at speed of average human beings, as we'll see later, so Bionis is likely multiple times larger than that calc at the very least. But using that almost 3000 kilometers size as a lowball and seeing how Bionis and Mechonis move around while fighting, the force their clashes generate would be anywhere from 1 yodaton to dozens of yodatons of force, aka planet destructive power, and their speed about 1% of light speed. Okay, alright, we are starting decently high. But keep in mind that these are just the absolute lowest estimates based on their size and makeup, which is like scaling Superman to bare minimum 100 newtons of power per punch by measuring his body size. In truth, Bionis and Mechonis are far stronger. Let me give an example. Later in the story, when leader of the Mechon war effort against Homs, aka humans, remember, there was a war, Egil uses his own Yaldabaoth mech to take control of Mechonis' corpse, using it like a puppet to attack Bionis. And one of its attacks is shown to deal infinite damage.
Exodia! Obliterate!
You may think that, oh, that's just one-shot attack, that's meant to GG you if it's allowed to land. It's not actually infinite, it's just indicative. And normally, I would agree.
Aren't we forgetting one teensy-weensy but ever so crucial little tiny detail?
This is the game where a lot of bosses are meant to possess one-hit kill moves, and the point is to prevent them via future sight, and always those moves have just a numerical value, despite it mattering a little if the point is to just kill the player if it's allowed to connect. What I'm trying to say is that if they just wanted to portray one-shot game over type attack with insane amount of damage, they could have given it a generic 9999 value or something, but the developers chose to go with infinite very deliberately here. While this feat is more likely meant as a feat than not, you can take it as you will. It's not like this crap feat is crux of Xeno 1 scaling arguments in any way. It just supports the other universal arguments and feats in this series. So moving on. Other crazy things stated about Bionis and Mechonis is that their battle was stated to have taken place before time began. So I guess scratch that sub-relativistic speed stat. Not quite. This notion is later contradicted somewhat, as sentient beings like Machina and the Giants already existed. So, unless we think that literally every living being in the series is beyond time and has inaccessible speed or something, this is likely just a figure of speech for the battle that took place before the recorded history of Homs. However, Bionis and Mechonis having existed before time began still has some arguable evidence later, but right now it's not important.
Pull the other one.
What, however, is that the two wielded mythical blades called Monado that allowed them to basically kill each other in a grand battle, leaving their husks behind to be populated by various beings originally born from the two. Bionis became home of all biological life, and Mechonis created mechanical children of its own. For the body of Bionis, however, this served more sinister purpose, as all life born from Bionis would return to its body to fuel it upon their deaths, as part of the plan of Zanza, the soul of Bionis, whom we'll be talking about as a separate entity later. The creation of Homs was only a plot to return all ether in the universe back to Zanza, destroying and recreating it. He made life to procreate and create more of itself, and thus more ether. Granting the Homs intellect was but a mistaken whim. Ether, as it is explained in Xeno 1, is mysterious energy that forms everything, both material things like atoms and immaterial things such as time, space, fate, and likely more. So basically, substance the universe is made up of, and everything is interconnected because of it. In some areas of the world, it is more densely concentrated, or less, which may affect biological life forms negatively. Sometimes ether is so concentrated it becomes physical substance that can be used as fuel and crap for various technologies. Ether's name comes from Greek word aether, which refers to both one of the primordial gods predating the existence, who was personification of formless sky, and the classical fifth element in ancient sciences, aka formless matter or energy that fills all things beyond other four material elements, such as empty space and even stars. More modern sciences also use the term ether occasionally to refer to same thing when lacking more sciencey term, which makes it often conflated with likes of dark matter. Of course, the world isn't static, there's things happening, so ether flows, and such movement can be calculated. Thus it is possible to know how ether is positioned in past, present and future. But that is ability only for wielders of the Monado. And that nicely segues us into talking about the most important object of the game, if not the franchise, and by extension, its primary wielder, our main character, Shulk, as his abilities primarily come from the Monado. So, what is Monado? Monado is a device that controls ether itself, fittingly named after a concept of monad from Gnostic mysticism and philosophy. Monad is said to be origin point of all phenomena, be it a material, immaterial or divine, as well as prime mover of these ideas. It is trans-dual and trans-one totality of all lesser things that are merely its emanations, these lesser totalities being called ions. Even God, as conceived by the Old Testament, is just one of these ions with its own demiurges, but still just a facet of totality that is the monad, the true face of God.
But that's just a name, right? It's not like Vegeta is shooting actual Big Bang when he shoots a ball. Yeah.
That is correct. However, naming conventions in Xeno series and Takahashi Tetsuya's works in general are very important and actively help fans interpret what they are seeing, so this should at the very least be kept in mind when analyzing Monado. So, what can this fancy sword do? Obviously, it's got this extendable energy blade and acts based on its user's will. To use the sword is to make your will into reality. And it famously grants the ability of visions that reveal the future, or the future that will happen unless the wielder decides to act on their foreknowledge and change things around, something which Shulk's constantly overthinking and second-guessing his actions over, which makes for some interesting drama. Too bad this complexity can't be showed in Smash, from where many have gotten the false impression of Shulk being just another happy-go-lucky anime protagonist, when in reality, half the time he's on f***ing revenge quest, and other half dealing with existential predestined nightmare and loss of identity.
I'm really feeling it! Now it's Shulk time! Backslash! Ah! This is the Monado power! I'm really feeling it! Slash! Shulk time! Shulk time! Shulk time! I can change the future! I'll kill you! Die! Talk all you want, because those words will be your last! You will know the pain and suffering you caused the Emperor and Fiora!
Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering.
Granted, I guess it's in line with how he acts in any other situation. It's not like he's out to kill Mario or anything in Smash. I mean, Metalface got done the goofy far more, to be honest. These visions happen in instant, no time passing in a real world while Shulk has them. While Shulk has no control over when visions occur, they actually appear based on what is the most appropriate time. When he needs to know, he'll know, such as in the battles where visions would constantly warn Shulk of the most devastating attacks, or if something he cares about is in danger. However, it's not like this happens every single time, though it could even be argued that it was blocked in few occasions, intentionally by Zanza within Shulk, such as the moment Dixon, that old pirate, shot him. More on all of that later. While precog is very useful ability and Shulk constantly gets better at it, heck, eventually he's able to view past too. It's not too crazy, till the ability evolves to him instinctually knowing the future, not requiring visions or even Monado itself for it, thanks to the blessing of Alvis. This is basically the best version of this kind of ability if you think about it. It's seemingly constantly on, and Shulk will know what to do. Another important ability of Monado are its arts, that grant Shulk a lot of different hexes, like healing himself and others, power to break enemy defenses, ability to increase power of himself and his friends so much that they can damage Mechon that were previously seen as these borderline invulnerable pieces of shit. Speed art increases his and the party's speed by so much that they can avoid attacks that normally blitz them. Shield art can create shields for him and party that can even block attacks that would one-shot. Can exchange his own life force for more energy, which is useful when you can just heal yourself immediately. Ether art can remove all buffs and amps from foes. Armor increases durability. Cyclone is AoE attack, and Monado Purge can delete power empowering auras of foes. And judging by the gameplay, it includes everything from transformations and physical empowerment to even mental games. Though it's not like it's permanent, and how far it extends, it's hard to say. Like, can Shulk shut down solar radiation inside Superman, or Goku's ki like in some late onset ki syndrome shit? I mean, maybe, considering Purge likely alters ether within its targets, which is energy both natural and constantly taken in by individuals. Monado can also harm non-physical and astral bodies. However, it is far more complex than just its general abilities. Throughout the story, the sword constantly gets stronger and Shulk with it, getting closer to its primordial state thanks to Zanza within it resurrecting bit by bit. Oh yeah, about that. The OG wielder of the Monado, Zanza, is still in there as a soul, which goes on to Monado's ability to insta-suck life force and souls as well as other non-physical things like mind, memory, energy, and use these abilities to bestow immortality. It can also change its size to match its user. But there are initially certain limits to things it could affect. The symbols on Monado kinda represent the ions under the principal concept's power. The more that are active make Monado able to cut and affect more of the creation below it. Originally, only symbols making it effective against Mechon, machines and beasts were active. Monado would just bounce off all the things that it didn't have a symbol for, such as faced Mechon that were part human. But after Zanza upgrades it into Monado 2, it could affect humanoids as well. And in the end game, Shulk gets his own third Monado, where all the symbols are active, the final one revealed to be God, allowing Monado to kill beings that are beyond fate itself. What third Monado, you ask? I guess I should mention at this point that in truth there isn't just one Monado, but three. First one we see Shulk wield for the majority of the game belonged to Bionis, aka Zanza. Turns out, Shulk wasn't real during all this time, but a dead person Zanza's soul had occupied after humans rediscovered Monado, only making him appear alive in a twist you'd swear was ghost written by Nomura Tetsuya. This was what allowed Shulk to wield Monado in conjunction with his immense will, keeping it safe according to Zanza's plans till he was ready to rebirth himself. The second Monado was of course wielded by Mechonis, Bionis' counterpart aka Mechonis, who kinda in reverse way to Zanza possessed a host in Fiora, not to have her use Monado on her behalf, but to hide her Monado away and act herself to undermine Mechon war waged on Homs by Egil. Remember, there was a war. This Monado likely has similar abilities to the first, albeit it is not sealed, as it appears in its primordial form, which Zanza's Monado only took after he reclaims it. Both of the Monados coming together is stated to grant their true power over creation to their wielders, meaning that they are more powerful than when separated. Zanza even says he's completely immortal now, and does not need the cycle of sucking ether anymore. Third Monado, referred to as True Monado, appears after circumstances that aren't fully explained in the plot, but basically Monado, all three of them, are all this one sexy hot motherfucker, Alvis. So Alvis, oh boy, where to begin? Well, for starters, we need to talk spoilers for Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Power Scales video. Originally, Zanza and Mechonis were human nerds whose experiments with phase transition facility destroyed their universe, remaking it into two separate universes. Alvis was one of the three AIs overseeing the experiment, but that will mean little to you. When the universe split, Mechonis and Zanza got sucked into the newly created one, where they became gods tied to it, while Alvis became basically the system that governs it, the Monado.
I am Monado.
I was here at the beginning, and I will proclaim the end.
Despite originally being machine, they take form of a sexy anime character and I love them. Also, they're king of trolling as well, which just sets me off. Alvis in this iteration, yes, there will be many more later, takes the form of Almighty Demiurge, overseeing the providence of the new world, seemingly wishing for it to grow beyond the stagnation caused by the cycle designed by Zanza, seeing potential to end the cycle in Shulk, the boy who gained Monado by happenstances, putting him on predetermined path he would naturally grow to reject. Alvis begins to appear to him in dreams, and subtly guiding him towards realizing this desire. As Alvis is the Monado itself that bestows the three blades to those worthy of shaping the world under them, we will refer to the individual blades as Monado and the complete trinity of the things as Alvis, as he is the true Monado. Shulk ends up reaching his version of the Monado, called True Monado, only after all Bionis and Mechonis are united to oppose the fate decreed by Zanza, which starts by death via telepathia. And when Shulk and party combine their powers to oppose Zanza directly and realize this desire to change fate, Alvis gives the Monado to him. Apparently, capacity to become able to have Monado is thanks to Shulk starting to become god at this point, which was thanks to Zanza using him as a host, which made him connected to Monado and thus Alvis. So basically, he made Shulk the third driver to the blade that is Alvis, in a weird way if we were to use Xeno 2 terminology. Alvis's name comes from Old Norse word, which means all-wise, or omniscient person, who knows all things in the world, reflecting their role as administrative system of Xeno 1 universe. Alvis is the passage of fate, in a sense. All that was or can happen in the story, they are already aware of it, and it's practically by their design. Alvis is the one who determines if a god can determine anything, the true monad that contains even the ion, known as God.
Even gods are merely beings restricted to the limited power determined by providence. That power, although great, is not unlimited.
Giottomatte! Mario did 19! You said that Elvis was one of them Aegis blades from Xenoblade 2, like Malus and Myra are, but they don't control fate or make people into God. That makes no sense!
Well, first of all, don't judge a sibling for being little different. And second of all, while unfortunately little direct in-game explanation is given why Alvis is so different from other Trinity processor units, there are things we can use to infer what is going on here. Zanza and Meyneth were stated to have emerged as gods in the new world created by them after they were caught in the space-time transition, not necessarily by the Monado itself. It simply determines their power as god, thus it could be argued that Alvis was similarly elevated, like their two drivers were, which is symbolized in the name change as well. The rules of the two universes in Xeno 1 and Xeno 2 being a bit different, seemingly, may also have something to do with it too. But basically, when two humans became gods in the new world they made, an Aegis core crystal became administrative system of that world in form of predestination. We'll talk about these discrepancies and reasons for them in Xeno 2's video more in depth, I'm sure. So basically, Alvis is the Monado, are the three Monados, is the passage of fate, is an Aegis, is a Trinity processor, is the disciple of Zanza, is the seer, is the hottest character in the series, is the Monad, and so forth. Confused yet? I know for a fact that many of you who played the game had to consult Xeno Wikia to learn what the f is going on with this femboy, but joke's on us, the Wikia doesn't explain shit.
Alvis! How dare you disobey me! Ah!
After a little quote-unquote episode where Zanza steps out of Shulk, Shulk loses the Monado and instead wields Monado replica built by Migol, who studied the OG one to create device that can partially mimic same effects, which was incredibly badly introduced in the game. Shulk would go on to build subsequent improved Monado replicas, and all mainly possess same abilities, apart from better ability to regulate ether density, but it's overall weaker than the actual Monado. Even so, in this nerfed state, he still keeps getting stronger during Xenoblade 1's story, and even retains his visions. As far as Shulk's own skills go, he is an extremely skilled fighter and tactical on how he uses his arts in fights and in conjunction with team. He and his friends in general are considered expert fighters over even the most experienced soldiers, and comparable to legendary Dunban, the Levi Ackerman of this game. And that's all about Monado and Shulk before we get to the end game. I think that's all.
However, we do have one more announcement.
As I explored before, Monado is dependent on ether, as it is the thing it manipulates in all of its functions. So technically, in a versus battle argument or the like, it could be just said that, oh, Shulk can't use any of the Monado abilities since there's no ether in a neutral setting, or the battle takes place in another verse, and also he'd die because humans in Xeno die from low ether environments. These are all fair points to make, as long as you ignore all the counterpoints, which there are surprisingly more than there's cultural festivals in anime. Monado does not only control the ether around it, but generates and releases it, as stated many times. In a universe devoid of ether, Monado could simply introduce ether into it and start manipulating the universe that way. While it's never outright said, Monado is implied to be the thing that's actually origin of all the ether that the universe is made up of, as not only is just one of them reason for universe's death and rebirth, but the entire thing is the system that governs it all. Also, you could just as easily argue that ether is at the end of the day the thing that makes up all the mundane things other verses tend to operate under, like physical atoms and energies or spiritual ones and so on. So why wouldn't Monado manipulate those subcategories of the things it's actually manipulating? You could say it don't work like that, cause other versus stuff is not made of these tiny things Monado manips. But in Xeno 2, Shulk goes to Alrest, which is not entirely made of either. Trust me, we'll get to this eventually in Xeno 2 video, where he and everybody uses Monado just fine and never comments on any drawbacks. So that should show Monado functioning in canon setting. This is also supported by other crossoverisms such as Smash Brothers and Project X Zone, latter of which explicitly treats Xeno lore as canon to it, where not only are characters able to exist in non-ether environments with no drawbacks at all, but in these games both Shulk and Fiora use their Monados like normal. Hell, Smash even has visions that show faith in canon cutscenes, despite Zanza not being near that verse pulling the strings, presumably. The ether deficiency thing not happening in crossovers could be called inconsistency, but hey, clearly these instances sanctioned by the OG authors and Smash in particular meant to represent stories of the characters in them give more precedence to Xeno characters operating in other universes than not. So eat that. It's shown to be fine, and even if it wasn't, there are arguments in favor of it. Motherfucker, is that the timecode we are on? Damn, I gotta speed this along. Let's next look at the quantifiable feats, when we scale Shulk's party members and the various foes they fight and scale off of. First, we got a true Chad, Ryan Gosling.
Yeah! Rhyme time! When the going gets going, the tough get tough. You can't have a rainbow without Ryan, baby.
Tank of the group, who while not as smart as rest of his team, makes up for it with big heart and likely the highest physicals, and a versatile weapon in gun lance. A lance that is gun, lance, and even a shield. Next, we have integral member of any RPG party, the healer in Charla. She's a former military medic of Colony 6, place situated right at Bionis' crotch. She was mentored by the TF medic apparently, judging by how she shoots her patients. While possessing least power out of everyone in the party, she has the best range, thanks to her rifle, and obviously hacks like removing debuffs, amping people, sleep-inducing, and potential insta-kill bullets. Next member is Dunban, a regular BMF, who's regarded as the greatest soldier of the war between Homs and Mechon. Remember, there was a war! Dunban was the only human strong enough mentally and physically to wield the Monado, which cost him his right arm. After bestowing Monado to Shulk, he takes up a katana created by Dixon to be durable enough to smash Mechon armor. Later, all the characters would gain weapons of such makeup and more. Even while forced to use his less dominant hand, he still has impressive statements and skills that equal best of the best. And his main abilities in fight include ability to amplify his skill, accuracy, and removing buffs. Then we have Melia, who's the best girl, even though she older than your gran. As the princess of high Entia race, she makes up for her lack of physical power with powerful ether-based magic, which includes elemental attacks, sleep-inducing HP drain, attack reflection, and ability to reduce ether-based abilities and remove auras and arts temporarily, like Monado can, making her integral in fighting the likes of Telethia. Ricky is the goofball of the group, a no-pawn forced to hero it up to pay debt his family's on to the mafia. That's right, Ricky my boy f***s hard, both figuratively and literally, boasting variety of magic abilities like paralysis, poison, sleep, and elemental attacks like freeze and burn. Last one is Fiora, you know, that dead childhood friend Shulk started his whole journey for, who didn't actually die, but instead was remade into phased Mechon, who are giant mechanical armors wielded by humans. Now part machine, she not only gained powerful abilities like drones, energy cannons and so on, but she also came to house the god of Mechon, Mayneth, as well as her Monado within her. While Fiora doesn't really mess with Mayneth's abilities that much, she can utilize them to a degree, as seen in X-Zone and in versus debating sense would probably be able to let her out, like happens in the game's story, but she eventually loses these abilities upon Zanza slaying Mayneth. And before we move on to the stuff all of them scale to, let's rank them real quick. Shulk is easily the strongest, like there is no contest, he's demonstrably above everyone to the point that he could be argued to carry the team throughout the endgame thanks to Monado, no need to dwell on that any further. Fiora in her Mechon form is clearly the second behind him, both with and post Mayneth, based on how she is somewhat keeping up with Shulk during the endgame, and it's a contest between Melia and Dunban at who's the third strongest. Dunban on one hand has more impressive lore and statements, but Melia has better abilities and arguably better feats. I'd probably pick Melia, but it can go either way. Ryan might come next as the muscle of the group, but he lacks anything as impressive as those above him. While Ricky and Sharla are more support roles, Sharla being more specialized in healing but having better range and could maybe beat Ricky if she gains distance, but Ricky can likely beat people stronger than her in 1v1. Or you could argue Ricky goes above Ryan or even into third place if you take the no-pawns hyping him up to be able to solo a Telethia at that point in the story, as a fact. But that is not supported by the story itself. Its kids, Nene and Kino, are the bottom tier, far from useless but lack anything suggesting they'd be superior to anyone here. And that's the gang. Throughout the story, all of them are stated to grow in power by constantly fighting, Shulk especially, to the point that they could defeat foes like Metalface and Beldabouth, who swept them in previous encounters, like just a day or so before. Their true strength is fighting as team, which can be seen in chain attacks, and are likely far stronger than some of their parts. Plus, all of them have access to further abilities via stuff like Gear and Ether Gems, several per person, which I'm gonna flash on the screen here for a sec. Now for the part you should have been waiting for. Quantifiable feats almost everyone in Xeno 1 should scale to. How powerful is this game? Starting with attack power and durability, every fodder Homs in the game should be able to fight lower tier Mechon, though unable to damage their armor, unless wielding special weapons that can handle that kind of strength. Kinda like a Beowulf situation, I guess. Regardless, this durability is hard to gauge, but it's safe to say that even low tier Mechon are tough as nipples, and can typically be handled without anything less than Colony's heavy artillery cannons, which they can also easily explode. Usually cocked around 3.87 tons of TNT, large building level, and these are just the Goombas of the game. Dunban, while wielding the Monado in the war, remember the war between Homs and Mechon, was able to generate Blast of Light, eclipsing Sword Valley, which is at least 3.4 kilotons, aka small town level, but it could be far higher if that blast eradicated the Mechon around him. Telethia, the giant dragonic servants of Zanza, the stand-ins for God's angels in this game, function as major enemies for the party, and kind of bosses, along with phased Mechon. Telethia can devastate entire areas just by existing, and they possess Wario's hex abilities, such as regeneration, mind reading, and auras that make them invulnerable, as well as the ability to absorb ether. Phased Mechon are considered very powerful in same vein as Telethia. Metal, please don't Google my Japanese name Phase, chiefly among them. And This guy is just the worst. One of the most evil sacks of shit I've seen past 10 years. He, along with rest of the Phased Mechon, possess Wario's short and long-ranged killing tools, as well as anti-ether substance that can dissolve living beings in an instant. Shulk and the party fight constantly stronger variants of the two, which escalates to the point where primary Telethia, seen at the endgame, are meant to absorb all the ether in the entire universe over time, after they have killed everyone. The party also defeated Yaldabaoth, the ultimate and strongest Phased Mechon, fielded by their leader, Egil. Yaldabaoth could manipulate and move the body of Mechonis after absorbing ether collected from Bionis, explicitly stated to have become the new soul powering all of Mechonis, and thus Egil with Yaldabaoth would scale to planetary to potentially infinite levels of power I outlined in previous section. This level of power is pretty consistent with one of the most important scaling chains of the series, that particularly pertains to main character squads of Xeno games, that being the Titan scaling. So, you know the Titans of Xeno 2? Big, country-sized creatures existing in Sea of Clouds? You have any idea how much energy these f***s generate just by f***ing moving and displacing the Cloud Sea? It's f***ing massive! The bare minimum calculated from Urian Titan merely surfacing is around 98.28 exatons of kinetic energy, which is enough to destroy several moons at once. Malos then wields artiface gargoyles, each that are stated to rival energy of even the largest of titans, which Xeno 2's upper tier blades can fight and beat, on top of some of the top tier blades like Brigid and Nia being capable of directly fighting Mithra or Malos, two Aegis blades that can kill and sink even the largest of the titans that are considered continents, while Uriah is crappy ass country class titan. The top tier blade should at least vaguely scale to the main character parties of all three main Xeno games, while a variety of factors we'll explore later, but all of that is literally nothing compared to the endgame feats in both games, and should be taken as baseline. For the speed scaling, there are various electricity and even natural lightning based attacks, such as ones Mechon and Melia have, that can be dodged in the game like any old boring move, granting every character speeds in a range of 200,000 miles per hour to even 900,000 miles per hour, aka hypersonic speed. And there are even attacks referred to as lasers and light beams, but some of them seem electric based instead, so it's a bit nebulous if those are FTL. Regardless, the Xeno 1 cast scaling to Xeno 2 in speed is also appropriate, and in that game there are light speed feats galore. And then there are weird MFTL feats. Shulk and party are able to run across memory spaces version of Earth's solar system, and while they do cross vast distances mainly by teleporting, the distances they do cover on foot are also notable. And in one cutscene where Shulk and Alvis are just chilling and admiring how f***able each of them is, I mean, all of you are, except for you, Cross, while they casually drift from Saturn to Earth's moon in about a minute, which weirdly makes this feat 80 times faster than light. But these feats are garbage to what Telethia are capable of. In Xenoblade X, told you I would come around to mentioning it, ganglion race of aliens have these mechs called Scales that are stated to have traveled across Samar Federation system, which spans 6 million light years, aka span of many galaxies. Ganglion did this feat in absolute maximum time of 28 years, which comes out at a generous number of over 2100 times faster than light. So they are faster than you, bitch. Scales of the main characters are capable of keeping up with Ganglion scales, and even far stronger and faster ones. And then among the super bosses of the game is Telethia from Xeno 1, that is considered in the lore to be so dangerous it's akin to divine judge of all life, and thus is called the Endbringer. And as we know, Xeno 1 party can beat the strongest variants of these f***s. That should be comparable in speed. And also, you know, they fight their creator and master, whose mere cells the Telethia are. Yes, but the feats only get crazier from here, as we arrive to the end game. After Egil and Yaldabaoth get their asses handed to them by the party, Zanza finally returns and declares himself God, and his plans to remake the universe and become the Emperor of the World, CEO of Apple Incorporated, and wish to overthrow Kevin Feige as the ruler of MCU before it gets out of hand. And Dixon and Loritia are revealed to be his ancient immortal Death Eaters. So yeah, that's a crazy place to start. Loritia wields attack called Big Bang, which she heavily implies is approximation of the real one by screaming how it defined her master. Zanza, of course, survived and was remade in Creation of the Universe, which is actually implied to be entire multiverse in Xenoblade X, and this creation is likened to Big Bang here, so it may actually have potency of one? It's not like that's important, but seeing to as party is going to fight literal higher dimensional god next, it would be at least appropriate. Oh yeah, the heroes beat Zanza's disciples, by the way. Alas, poor Dixon, I knew him well. One final obstacle would remain in Zanza, who in a final battle against the heroes takes a form more reminiscent of Bionis, looking like a grade A asshole. So let's finally talk about him and the god tiers of the worst. I've sidestepped the issue for uncharacteristically long. How strong is the guy called God? Sure, anyone can say that they're God for any number of reasons, like Waddle Dee may look like God if dropped into Father Verse, but Zanza pretty much deserves the title in most verses. Zanza was originally a non-corporeal entity who needs to possess his own creations to survive, via his Monado, and if you remember what we talked about Monado, can't blame you if you don't, that was so long ago, you can basically think of it as kind of an infinity gauntlet in functionality, as it can practically manipulate all of the same forces. So the sheer amount of things Zanza can do, just ability-wise, makes him stronger than many verses. And in the final battle, he has two. The gnarly abilities he gains include creation of powerful effigies that fight for him and eat buffs for breakfast. He can casually shit out black and white holes. He can recreate your past foes from your own memory and transform himself to become more powerful on top of all the things Shulk has used the Monado for. He even seemingly recreates the world in one of his attacks. He also created Memory Space, a copy of his original universe, and universes in Xenoblade are stated to be infinite. Also, just by appearing, he transformed Memory Space into a spinning event horizon called Sentient Genesis. In his last form, he becomes symbolic unification of Bionis and Mechonis, which is meant to evoke a combination of yin and yang, a perfect god that commands all things. But what makes him truly worth of his title is the passage of faith. After all, creator or a god are just names people ascribe to fate to give it personality or a motive, is it not? If something so utterly powerful exists and decides our fates for us, wouldn't you say that there is no reason to oppose something like that? But what else are we supposed to do than to oppose it when it tries to invalidate all of our victories and hardships? All things are determined by fate. You waking up and opening your door to greet the day was destined to happen as much as your eventual passing from this mortal coil. You opened your door because you woke up. It happened because it could only happen that way. It was cause and effect. Everything is connected. Past, present, and future all are a certain way, as one cause begets effects, which beget more causes, which beget more effects in turn. The tapestry of the world is made up of innumerable words that are arranged to form an unbreakable sentence, that is fate. And if you can't change fate, you would reshape the story of the world under it, as if editing a book. Of course, just by virtue of having ability to change fate doesn't make you this all-powerful being. There are usually limits and levels to this sort of abilities in fiction. For example, Nagito from Danganronpa and Karin from UQ Holder can both influence fate so that things will always happen more favorably for them, but they do not control the circumstances, just the results. While various S&T and Persona deities can control fate on the scale of a singular person to even all of humanity or the universe, and others have big fuck-off moves that rewrite cause and effect, maybe once or twice. There exist also similar powers, such as rewriting timeline you are on with different one, or altering its naturally existing possibilities. This is not manipulating fate per se, but can achieve similar results. But here, none of these examples are the case. when he had but one Monado, Zanza seemed to have less control over fate. He had determined the unbreakable outcomes, but cared less for the details. But after obtaining the second Monado, Zanza declares that he is one with passage of fate itself. All events across time are his to decide. Alvis literally states that this is the case. All things are in his hands now, aside from the fate of Shulk, who's come to exist outside of the plan. Wielders of the Monado are explicitly stated to be outside of fate by Alvis, which is also showed by Mayneth not being part of Sansa's plans. He was actually not expecting to beat her and take her Monado.
A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
But others are completely bound by the passage. Zanza's even called omnipotent few times for this ability. In other words, pick a character who's gonna go and face him and bam, just like that, congrats, they've just lost. Zanza has ordained that their fate is to lose, or they were never born, or never got that strong, or any of the literally infinite amount of things he can make the f up. Unless the character he's fighting, to use versus related example, can resist cause and effect to the degree that he controls it. Then they can have a real fight involving silly little fisticuffs like lesser beings do. But just how great is this control? As I explored in my Smash Ultimate video, fate is a concept relative to the cosmology that it presides over, and heavily connected to time, as it controls how events happen across it. Xenoblade 1's universe is stated to be endless, and concept of eternity is constantly implied and even confirmed. Thus, the eternal time is larger infinity that contains the lesser infinity that is the universe, making a timeline fourth-dimensional construct. There are infinite of these universes, and thus infinite timelines as well, making the cosmology, at least this far, fifth-dimensional. And that is the extent Zanza controls the fate to. Well, not necessarily. The universe in Xeno 1 is described as closed-off universe or multiverse, go figure, and Zanza/Alvis likely only influences its fate and nothing beyond it, dropping the dimensional tier via this interpretation. However, it can be argued either way in my opinion, due to how unclear it is, and the fact that Monado's power comes from the conduit also makes things unclear. And don't worry, we'll discuss that later. Alternatively, if you take statements of Zanza shackling the destinies of everybody as him literally calling the new timelines free will would create, like he's actually denying the existence of multiple timelines that would normally exist in the universe, that would make the feat more impressive, as it is later stated that there are infinite number of different future timelines after Zanza is defeated, so those would normally exist without him. And if you further take that with every universe in the multiverse working that way and Zanza controls them all, it becomes six-dimensional feat. Fuck. Then what about memory space? It's a realm beyond time. Oh yeah, did I forget to mention that it's beyond time? Yeah, it's beyond time. No, it doesn't lack time. Time is not zero there. Nope. It is beyond it, as in above it all. Yeah, immeasurable speed feat right there, as if existing beyond fate wasn't already that. But the point is that memory space is implied to be higher dimension too, by being dimension above time. But to what level? I guess it's above all these timelines, but alternatively it could be just taken as being outside the cosmology and not contained by anything that wouldn't thus affect the tally. But seeing to as how characters are capable of warping it, it would make it 7th dimensional feat, if it's indeed above all timelines. So lowballing, Monado users' power and passage of fate is 5th dimensional to 6th dimensional, and using the infinite timelines interpretation 6th to 7th dimensional, ignoring the conduit for a second. In a scenario with this many alternative ways of looking at things, where right answer isn't clear, we would go with the mid-ball. But I think we know what the answer is here. Considering that the both memory space and passage of fate would be dimension above space-time, what would be the space-time in this scenario? Why, it would be all of these timelines, of course, which would include those naturally born infinite timelines, whether or not Zanza is actually affecting them all with his fate manipulation or not. So, I think it's fair to call this feat 7th dimensional. If you disagree with this interpretation, that's fine, then it's 6D, but I'll be continuing on with the most consistent looking 7D. I hope I don't have to explain to you how higher dimensional scaling works. Go watch YouTube and find out, I don't know. But if I were to use your layman's terms, Zanza is bare min infinitely stronger than infinite power that is infinite. Lol. Potency-wise, just one layer of 7th-dimensional acausality is not enough to protect from passage of fate, as Shulk still couldn't prevent certain things like death of Melia's dad, for example, despite his resistance to fate manipulation via visions. However, he does eventually reach this level of acausality, and Alvis is layer above that, as seen in the end.
Alvis! How dare you!
Oh, and just FYI, this is all obviously highly immeasurable speed as well, as we are talking about characters who can affect all of time and can exist and affect spaces beyond time as well as react to and view all of it. This is all very consistent with Xeno 3's feats as well, if I might add. And this all applies to AP, it's undeniable. I'm sorry guys. Not only is Zanza shown to create, destroy and remake these realms he controls mid-boss battle, he could simply just wish that they blew up and that he was the only one left, which applies to memory space. I'm stressing this so much because it's important that you get it. Not to mention how this can all be argued to scale higher via the conduit. Like, Zanza knows it's there, yet he believes that he is truly all-powerful and can't be overcome, though this is a bit weird argument, so let's leave it alone for now. But the point of the point was that this nigh all-powerful 7th-dimensional god not only can't get rid of Shulk and party in their final confrontation, but the heroes are able to body him for good after Shulk gains the true Monado. So Shulk slays the asshole god, who claims that all that he is, even his very memory, is erased. Which I don't know how literally that's meant to be taken. And then he's greeted by Alvis in their best Wave Existence cosplay, who explains the convoluted backstory of the world to him and how now he's the new god of this world. All 3 Monados and total control of passage of fate being his to do as he sees fit, as the universe dies around him, both thanks to Zanza's machinations and his newfound absence. Basically, all that I said about Zanza a few million minutes ago applies to Shulk in this form. All the hacks, all the scaling, all the ego, well, maybe not that, but far stronger, as Shulk has one Monado more on Alvis's full support, as their goals are the same. Then, as the entire game has been leading up to, Shulk decides to recreate the universe so that there are no more gods that would decide the fates of mortals, creating a world where future is not set, but it has infinite, boundless possibilities. The epic story you've heard dozens of times. Wait a second. This is just the ending of Blaze Blue's Central Fiction! What the fuck? Regardless, this act ends up erasing Shulk's godlike powers and the Monado, and Alvis also disappears. This is one of the biggest feats in the series yet. What Shulk does here is insane. People hype up Madoka Magica for that one feat of Madoka erasing concept of witches, when in actuality all she did was make it so that witches will die when they are born, since she couldn't actually stop them from being born. But here, while I don't think Shulk erased the concept of godhood itself, I think people could theoretically become gods after all of this. But what he did was remaking the whole universe into a form where it doesn't need gods. And as I've said for close to an hour now, the world exists only because of God's existences. Alvis is literally the foundational system of the world, and they are just gone now. And that system, it governed literally everything up and down the 7th dimensional fate. Shulk rewrote universe's conceptual existence so that it went from existing because of gods to outright not needing them. And now, all life can freely walk to the world of new possibilities. And that's that.
Hold it! But everyone is a regular human!
You mean Holmes, right?
No, you idiot! Shulk almost died to a bullet! He can't be that strong! It doesn't make sense! Yeah.
Well, haven't Goku, Superman, Thor, and Cloud f***ing Strife all gotten owned by bullets? I guess they are not strong either, yeah. Fucking handgun is the strongest mofo ever. I should be scaling that. In all seriousness, yes, Shulk was shot, and in a very plot-important scene at that, so it's not like it can be ignored. Easiest way to reconcile this strange bullet thing is to call it an outlier, aka low-end feat, which, as you know, are showings that contradict the most consistent information we are given. For example, we've seen countless instances of this in the media where a character like Superman is shown to be massively faster than light during hundreds of instances, but then suddenly, in one comic, he fails to catch up to a regular bullet. This is not consistent with his 100 other feats, yet it happened and someone died for it. Consistency should always be the most important thing in power scaling and argumentation in general. If we said that literally every feat goes, every comic book character ever is Outerversal or Batman kicking Spectre that one time, while everyone is simultaneously weaker than a handgun. There are and always will be a lot of examples of this kind of contradictory scaling, and Shulk getting damaged by a regular bullet would be one, considering the crazy beings he fights and needs to at least survive occasional hit and clash of powers from. Other way to look at it is the surrounding context. While we are never explicitly told what was in that bullet, or its exact power level, it was shot by Dixon, immortal giant who is Zanza's disciple and pretty much the second strongest foe in the game. And that gun itself was supernatural blade in disguise that apparently shoots chaos. If a guy like that thought that the bullet was relevant, hey, maybe it's not a regular ass bullet, how about that? So that's it for addressing that weird feat. Also, there was another one. What was it?
Fall damage?
Oh yeah, that. Thanks, dickhead. Falling from high place is generally a thing many writers think is threatening, despite human falling from orbit is like large building level, but it sure feels impressive. So they always put it in and create inconsistencies in stories. But funny enough, in Xenoblade, this is not a real inconsistency. Fall damage does not actually exist outside of gameplay. It's never really in any of the cutscenes. Shulk and gang even survive fall from the top of Mechonis, you know, healthy 3,000 kilometers, and everyone is fine and not really bothered by it, so no. And then there's one big thing left to address. Does it make sense for the party to fight and defeat a guy as stupidly fucking strong as Zanza? Aren't like half of our heroes normies who grinded without any special god amps? Like, why can't they fight a god all of a sudden? Like, he should be like infinities above them, right? Well, I'd argue Xenoblade gives at least moderately better reasons than most of its genre as to how the heroes can fight such an world-ending fight in the end, which always has to happen in RPGs. Firstly, it can be argued and kinda inferred that Shulk is majorly carrying the battle. Doesn't stop his teammates from scaling to 7D, but keep that in mind. This is due to Shulk constantly using his visions to overcome any of the fates Zanza decrees for them and subvert them in a big game of no you. Zanza even tries to experience future before the battle, but his visions stop as his future is set to end by Shulk's hand. Also, one of the Monado's abilities is literally amping teammates. Even if Zanza could one-shot them a million times over, Shulk can just neg that. So that's likely what is happening here in canonical sense. Everyone is a weird ether being here anyway, and normal human standards shouldn't apply to them. Plus, the whole of game's story leads up to this battle with God, and its core messages and ending hinge on it. So it's not like it can be outlier. Shulk and party fighting Zanza is one of the few facets of the game that absolutely can't be taken out, lest the story and the themes about fate stop functioning. Zanza literally needs to be this powerful. It is the reason for not only anything happening in the plot, but the reason why he is opposed in the first place. While comparatively, Shulk getting shot, even if it was by regular old bullet in this case, which it wasn't, could theoretically be replaced by any number of actions that get him from point A to point B in the writing room. While the scene is similarly important, its circumstances really aren't. Unlike in use our power to fell a god and seize our destinies scene, which can't work without its circumstances, which is Zanza's lore. In conclusion, Xenoblade 1 is a game full of very strong characters. The god tiers reaching 7th dimensional power, no stinky universe busters here, with immeasurable speed stretching throughout all of time and dimensions, and hexes that instantly end most battles. They are stronger than you and have the power of anime and god. As for tiering the characters, let's do that quick. Low tiers are all the random monsters and fodder, mid tiers include Thelethia and Faced Mechon on their level, high tiers are Egil with Yaldabaoth, Zanza's disciples, and the party, who fight all of these people and can beat them as a team, And God tiers are the true Monado users. Zanza with 2 Monados is superior to Mainnet, whose he is equal when both had 1, while Shulk with true Monado is relative to Zanza. And with all 3 Monados, Shulk is basically the supreme being of the verse as of now, while Alvis is either second or the first most powerful. They're kinda like Ugo from Magi series in a sense that power of gods is theirs to decide, so while Alvis is technically part of each god's power set, they can decide if they have that power in the first place.
How dare you!
Though this might not apply to Shulk, who gained the totality of Alvis's power. All in all, Xenoblade as of now easily scales above Nintendo's powerhouse verses, like Pokemon, mainline Super Mario, and even Kirby. Possibly being the strongest series Nintendo has ever licensed under them, aside from Earthbound perhaps, but that's another video for far-flung future, I'm sure. And future, as we know now, is endless, so let's enjoy it to its fullest. Too bad I didn't get to talk about the story and the themes more than I did. Like, I legit think Xeno 1 is the most quintessential fight your fate and defeat a god type of story. And there are all these interesting ideas about both human and divine existence. Like, every character represents some different condition. Mainnet is like that half of the gods that loves their creations and wants to do right by them, while Zanza is this indifferent god that wants to do with their creations as they please, because who are you to judge a god? And they create this dichotomy that represents how divinity is seen in our world, and of course humans in comparison are more multiplicious in their natures, but all have that common human experience. You know, stuff like that. But this is not the video for that, unfortunately, and there's only so much I can do in limited time. Perhaps some other day. But before I go, really, thank you for watching this video. I hope this video encourages people to talk more about Xenoblade characters in Versus sense, or just made you appreciate the game's power systems and storytelling more. But most of all, I hope you enjoyed and learned something new about the franchise. I also hope that you'll tune back in for a part 2, which will focus on Xenoblade 2 cast of characters. Who knows when that'll be. Anyways, show the video and the channel some love. I'm an old fart. Throw me some slack, will you? And, yeah. Bye.